we have our website launched on the 11th.
Oh.
Yeah, so we're getting that going. Let's see. Let me let them all hook up. We are live on some of them now. Let me just make sure they're all good to go. Got a couple of stragglers, but we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to the live and the replay. We've got the beautiful, brave Mary Rodwell, legend. Yeah, she's come up on some of the shows. We've had some people come on that brought you up. I'm going to give people a minute and 19 seconds to come in the house. Since we're just jumping on, we're going to play the intro. We'll be right back. We got the beautiful Mary Rodwell's in the house. Let's see. Allison New York says the new human legend. Angela Joelle says, love your work. You inspire so many. We had a couple of people on, I think in the last couple of weeks. One of them was relaying to us their journey, and they were talking about, and I don't think they were in Australia either, and they were talking about how they were indoctrinated or getting acclimated with Star Family, and they called Mary Rodwell and she walked them through it. And then somebody said it about 2 days later. And then Saturday we had Marie Batchelor on, and yeah, Marie was on. We had a great show. We've had great shows like you and I have together, and it was the best one. And I was telling her that, about a week prior, Morgan said, "Hey, look at this," and I think you and Marie were on with somebody was hosting it, and you guys were talking about what was going on in Victoria, and Marie and I talked about it, from a higher perspective. It was a very interesting conversation. So I know that probably hits home with you. You were just telling me before the show that you haven't been able to travel around so much, but you enjoyed being home and being in your own space. You look great. You look fantastic. I know you can't go get your hair done or do anything like that, but you look like you just, I don't know, you look younger. You just look vibrant. So you're converting that perceived negativity into positive vibes, I can tell.
Oh, thank you, Todd. And it's lovely to know that I still don't look too aged. But I will have to say that staying at home has been really nice for me because I do so much traveling. It's been lovely to be, and I've got a little 10-month-old granddaughter that I'm thoroughly enjoying as well. But more than anything, it's been time to reflect, and the positive that both Marie Batchelor and I realized, even though she's had a really rough time in Victoria because it's face masks, it's the whole lockdown. In Agnes Water, this little tourist town in central Queensland, there's not a mask in sight.
Oh, wow.
And, they say you can only have 110 go into the supermarket. We never have 110 people go in the supermarket anyway. So we've been relatively untouched, and, and I'm very grateful for that. But my heart goes out to so many that have been trapped in that kind of experience. And the positive, I think the main one I can see is that it gives time for people to reflect and understand what's important, and to access shows they wouldn't normally perhaps watch. And, you know, lots and lots are waking up, and that is a real positive.
Yes, it is, and I've actually brought your name up a few times since the last time we talked in conversations in regard to professionals that are waking up. Some of that came up. The dialogue would be around COVID or the medical industry, and then some with the children. Of course, they just keep coming and coming and coming. So it's been pretty exciting, and I would imagine for you, having been doing this for so long, that even though given the circumstances going on the global stage, there's got to be some level of validation and satisfaction for you that after all these years, everyone's catching up with you.
Actually, it's very heartening, and particularly the professionals in psychology. There's been also doctors and nurses and those within the medical profession particularly, but also, you know, the broader academic community is waking up. And I wanted to say that when you're getting stories where a 2-year-old's talking about codes, for example, and I just wanted to pick out some points from one case that I've had recently. And it's a little boy who's now 9, but before he was 6, he said these little beings were visiting him, and they were used to take him, and they're the science team. He was told he was special. He was shown on screens dinosaurs and future timelines. He goes up through his head and he can go anywhere in the universe. Not supposed to speak about it, they make him forget. He's a time traveler from the future. And he said that his alien form is really us from the future. He has no nails, only 4 fingers. He said the older, taller aliens give him an in-depth education, and ultraviolet light as the creation spectrum. He's shown the past and the future, and the IQ of the aliens he knows is over 400.
God. And so, and you said he was us from the future?
He said he's a time traveler from the future, and he is like we will be in the future.
Wow.
But we won't be quite as we are now. We're going to have less digits, obviously. We look slightly different.
Well, that's something I never thought about with time travel. You know, that you know, you would think, or I did, you know, just with what I've picked up on and what I've researched, that, you know, I might be in my body and all of a sudden I pop into another timeline. But this is someone who's actually a lot like the journey of the soul, picking a body and being born.
Yes.
You know, I've never thought of time travel in that way, but I guess that applies as well. Wow.
Well, if you remember, I may have mentioned to you, Todd, some years ago, I was it was a 9-year-old that was speaking to me. He's not 9 anymore. And I was talking to his father, and his father, while I was doing that, his son said, "Can I speak to Mary?" And I said, "Sure. Why do you feel you need to speak to me?" And he said, "Well, it's because of your frequency." And he explained to me he was from Orion. He worked on time travel technology, and he was a light physicist.
Wow.
Okay, so there you have again this coming up, the time travel side of things, that a lot of the children are being educated into as well, the new ones particularly. But you know, there's been a number of people say that they are aware they're a time traveler.
And I know there's a degree of multidimensionality in these two stories because they have recall of another aspect of themselves. Have you gotten any greater clarity, or have they spoken in a greater regard about multidimensionality? I mean, are we living in many places at one time, or is the soul, you know, transferring to another body or timeline as a separate experience?
It's a good question, and I would say yes to both, in the sense that even when I've been doing hypnosis, it's been interesting that some of my clients have seen aspects of themselves in other timelines, parallel realities, etc., having maybe a family and experiencing different things. So it almost seems, and the way that I've sort of understood it is almost like if you say the oversoul is the palm of your hand, but aspects of you are in different dimensions, different realities, all existing at the same time, although time is only linear anyway, so it's
Yeah.
constant. So this is the next level. And the interesting thing is with some of the children and some of the adults have also spoken about going into other forms on board craft, and remember it. For example, the 8-year-old I spoke to, that I wrote about in The New Human, explained that when he is on board craft in his human form, he goes into a mantid form on board craft some of the time, and the mantis are actually his ancestors, that when he dies he will go back to being a mantid. But he
Wow.
goes into the he said, I evaporate, he called it, into the mantid form for a while. But others have spoken about being in a grey form on board craft and their human body sort of waiting for them, if you like, in stasis almost. And that I said to this lady that's described herself in being a scientist, a Zeta, on board craft and doing experiments. And then she said, and I said to her, well, where's your human body? And she said, oh, it's sort of over there waiting. And I said, so how do you get back into your human form? And she described a ball of light leaving the grey Zeta body and reanimating a human form.
And I wonder what happens, you know, to the Zeta body when or maybe it's like we have a walk-in or another aspect come in. Now you've got two or more aspects. I wonder if it's something like that where they bring in one of their aspects to, you know, to learn or experience something else. Yeah.
Yeah, it could absolutely be that. But the interesting thing is they're not the only ones that have described being in a different form
Yeah.
on board craft. And some of them flying craft as well, and being shown star systems. I remember an 8-year-old explaining that to me, that they were teaching her how to fly the craft and how to understand star maps and whatever. Wow. And also taking her to a planet where she was learning how to levitate and use her third eye. But they also showed her genetic engineering, where they were showing her how they combine genetics of species for seeding other planets in this universe and other places as well. So she was being given an education, including being shown a black hole.
Wow.
And also where she was taken. And she said I think that this was the wormhole where she was being shown realities of the past and the future. So she said at one point she was seeing dinosaurs and whatever, and the next it was part of the future. So wow. They're getting all this multidimensional, you know, education. I call it the cosmic agenda, the cosmic education. So it's hardly surprising when you get a lot of these children going into our very pedestrian schools and being bored out their minds because they've got all this other information and it does not compute.
Yeah, I can see that. And this is good timing too. I spent the last day and a half doing a lot of stuff, as we all do, you know, but I was getting these downloads in particular, and I don't quite have it all. It's got to do with history or with lineage, and also with the way things work. And I was telling my previous guest about it, and they were basically showing me the galaxy. I know this much. It was limited to the galaxy, and they were showing me what you just referred to. They were showing me how it was seeded, and that I guess there was somewhat of a hierarchy type of thing. There was serpent type beings that were the chief engineers, and then there was a level of either Draco or reptilian. I couldn't really tell the difference. And there were some other ones I remember seeing mantid, but they were showing me kind of how it worked, how the inner workings of it all went down. And it was very interesting. And I was a little perplexed because I was like, okay, so then the humans are way down here, but in my questioning and the answers I was getting, I was shown that no, everybody's equal. This is more of like the physical occurrence within the galaxy or how a galaxy is formed. And there you still have a soul. And that's the part where I kind of got a little confused, but like talking with you, Somebody goes up to a ship, they put their body in stasis, they go into, let's just say, a soul complex that is in that mantid or in that zeta, and which could be very similar to what happens to us here when people talk about walk-ins or drop-ins. Yeah. Yeah, it's getting more interesting. I got to think too that this information, that like what I was experiencing in the last day or two, it's ramping up, and more people, not just these children, but more people are picking up on this type of stuff.
Well, the thing that has, in terms of awakening, and there's so many having these multidimensional experiences now, and the big issue for a lot of them is getting past their programming that says this is not okay, or if you open up to this is going to be you're going to end up in the crazy farm, or you're
Yeah.
going to or you're going to lose the plot, as we say over here,
Right.
whatever. What has been an important part of my work is actually showing people how to manage it and not be afraid of it, to ground it, if you like, or make it conscious, so they feel more like more confident in what they're getting, because there are so many like yourself that they're already doing that, and it's an integral part of your everyday life, and I said for people, ultimately it's meant to be conscious. You don't have to go into trance to access this information. It will be available to you in the same way your left brain offers you data or whatever. So it's about normalizing what is actually part of who we are anyway, that's being shut down, whether it's through programming with religion, science, or whatever has shut you down and said this is not okay. Modern psychology, which to me is, and I'm going to offend some people, I'm sure of it, modern psychology ought to be thrown out with yesterday's rubbish, and we need to start again and actually own the fact we're multidimensional beings, and that just because we have a physical senses, that we are not limited to those. And that's the big one that people need to get past.
Yeah, and that's and the lady that I was referring to, that's what she explained that you did for her, was you normalized it, you legitimized it, you allowed her, and whoever she was, and I can't remember, she was very high frequency, and that was a very integral part for her, because it was in, I think, the first portion of her wake up experience, and it kind of freaked her out. And another one had mentioned Marie also helped her as well. When I look back at this experience, or even our collective experience, as we start to come into this greater understanding and start to own it, there's a part of me that, going through the last day or two, was like, okay, well, I know this is code. I can certainly say it's code, and it's awakening something in me. But there was another part of me that was trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
So just from your experiences, is that a part of us that we need to shut down? Is that something that's due to programming and conditioning and belief systems that have been implanted in us?
I think there's two parts to that. First of all, there's some information that we can fully understand now, that we get downloads, we get information in our communications that are literally explaining or helping us understand what's going on for us as a spiritual being. But there are also codes coming in that, one young lady described them as one symbol would fill the room with encyclopedias in terms of information. It can't be translated in the normal way that we translate written word or whatever. And the understanding is, why am I getting things that I don't understand? How am I just stupid, or am I missing something or whatever? I believe there's two types. There's the second lot that are there for our full activation. In other words, when our DNA is fully activated, we're going to need new software for the new computer self, and that's software. So it's like, I always refer to that movie Lucy, where as she's taking, as more and more of the drug activates the DNA, she starts to see things more and more multidimensionally. That's going to be us, and we're going to need a new map, a new way of interpreting our multidimensional experience. And I believe the codes and the downloads are waiting for that. It's a timing thing. And so there's, as I say, so there's the conscious that we're ready for now, but there's also the protocols being
Yeah.
downloaded as software
Yeah.
for the new upgraded human.
And just like with the young girl, you know, or the child that said they don't allow me to remember everything. I've had, you know, several times, and this has been this year, when stuff is trying to poke its head in, and I'm saying, why can't I just have it all? You know, can you? And the message, and as you know, like with the symbol, doesn't always come in words, and basically the impression I've gotten is, we can't give it to you all right now, because then it would all be for nothing. It's kind of, that's it. And so is that something that's common with the people that you work with?
Yes, and I've also had a chat to the team and said, you know, can I know more about what's going on? And what came back was, this is going to be beyond what you think your imagination can imagine.
Okay.
That it's such a big shift of in terms of what's going to happen, and it's also not going to be helpful, because I need more awareness and understanding before I can go to that next level as well. I mean, it's like many of us have been born without conscious memory of our past lives, although a lot of the children are remembering their past lives as they come in, but many of us don't, unless we do hypnosis or whatever. The whole understanding is, as a soul, we're coming in with those limits so that we can experience it totally, rather than get compromised by the awareness, oh, this is really just me experiencing another of my earth life dramas, where you don't take it seriously. This is making sure that you focus and grow through those limits. And so you are constantly seeking to understand, which is part of the soul journey, I believe. So it's,
Yeah.
you know, I actually now don't want to know the future. It's like I'm fascinated by seeing how it unfolds. And it keeps us in the present. Aren't we told always to be in the present?
Yeah.
To
True.
live
That's
the
true.
present.
It's like building a chain, and you don't want to have a weak link in the chain. You know, if you build each one of them like a pyramid, you know, even anything with a foundation. And then, like, in regard to these children that are coming in, and you would probably know better than anybody, that they're coming in with more frequency, and, you know, really more code. I would say, let's just use the word frequency, a higher frequency. Do you think that with their presence in their collective higher frequency, even if it's a vast minority, is that opening more for everybody? Is it accelerating access to the type of information and memories and code that they have?
Absolutely. But then again, we're all, you know, embodying frequencies that we are sharing with those that are ready for those frequencies. Every one of us who is opening up and getting downloads and getting codes or frequencies, whether it's through music or through art, through light language or whatever, there are many different ways it's coming in. But also these children, because they're already of a higher frequency, that is also affecting those around them that are ready for that.
Yeah.
And this is the fascinating thing. It's almost, as I remember Dr. Olson saying, you know, it's like a virus, and I'm using that with a bit of a smile on my face, given what's going on at the moment. That is, you know, affecting literally all those that are, you know, whether people are aware of it or not, it's actually affecting them. Every single person that wakes up and is embodying those codes that are now going across the planet. And I remember testing my team, if you like, about something they told me, because I thought it sounded ridiculous. Not ridiculous, but a bit over the top, let's put it like that, a few years ago. It's probably about 10 more years ago now. I remember being told that everything that I put out in the books has got the frequencies, and everything, because I was saying to them, look, I get all this information sent to me. I get people sending me the codes, the scripts, I'm hearing star language and all the rest of it. I said, but I can only show a minute amount of that in my presentations. What am I supposed to do with all this other information? And they said to me, everything that you view, Mary, becomes part of your energetic field. And they said, so that wherever you go, And whatever you say, that is embodied in you, and that's where it goes. It goes out to whoever's ready for that activation. And I said, oh, that sounds a little bit incredible. Incredible.
Well, I mean, that's like, so anything that you put out has the imprint
Has
of everything that
and
you,
everything I've observed, but I got proof of it because I'm inclined to give my team rather a hard time. And I said, you're going to have to prove that one to me because that sounds extraordinary, to say the least. And within a week, I was at an expo in Perth, and I was sitting on a panel, and I wasn't actually saying a great deal at the time. Somebody else was speaking, but a lady stood up right in the middle of the audience and said, Mary, I've got to tell you this. And so it was, yes. She said, you are not saying a great deal right now, but you are beaming out all these frequencies to the audience.
Yeah.
And I'm feeling them. And that was my confirmation that everything I'd been told. So all of us, you know, people like yourself, everything, Todd, that you're doing, those frequencies are coming verbally, I believe, and energetically from you.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense that it's a physical, it's a physical expansion of consciousness. You know, I mean, you can visualize it in the ethers, but to actually, and that's where, you know, I've been going, and I guess we all are, because I know as the individual goes, so goes a collective. It's not just unique to one person, and that is that. And we actually talked about this on the previous show, how we are more than this body, and that has more meaning now than it did 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And maybe we're walking into a space now where we're working with our body as the energy field that it is, and being able to look past the body. And I kind of want to tie that into something that you said earlier. You said that when I was talking about, you know, can I just have it all now? And you were talking about how it needs to go in stages, and we'll actually need like a new software in order to take on this information and code that's beyond our capabilities with our imagination today. I guess it's a double question. How do we access that software, and or is it happening just in a natural progression?
That's a good question, because the numbers of people that contact me and say, I know I've got a mission, but I don't know whether I'm doing it, or, you know, whether I've got the right idea of what my mission is, or I need to know what my mission is. And my comment to that is, first of all, that the soul knows what it needs to do. And that, in other words, I say that, you know, your soul is not going to let you miss the bus.
Yeah.
The bottom line is that it wouldn't bring you here and get you through all this process, and then at the end of it say, oh, pity, you just missed it. You know, it's not going to happen. It is not going to happen, because that would be ridiculous. We, you know, because of the work that I did with past lives and people remembering, choosing their present life, their parents, the children, their journey on during this adventure, as human adventure, they make sure that they've put in place, as you would as a soul, you would put in place the red flags that you need, or the times where that's going to catapult you into new understanding. So what I say to people is chill, you know, and trust, because the soul knows where it's going. It will enlighten you and show you what you need to do when it's time for that. And you may already be doing more than you realize, because a lot of us as souls are going out of body, working in other ways. And one of the great things with the free research, where they were looking at the surveys of experiences, and they realized that out of the 4,200 people, 75% had their interactions out of body. So only 25 was physical. Wow. So we're off out there. We are doing stuff at night.
Yeah.
You know, and this is what we have to understand. You may be doing a huge amount of work out of body, and you're not even aware that you are.
Yeah. And it's really weird. It's paradoxical, because, and I totally relate to that, especially recently, that I know, like even last night when I laid down, I said, oh, I'm going to be busy tonight. But it just feels like we're always here. But at the same time, whatever we're doing out there dwarfs what we're doing here, which is just really ironic. It's paradoxical, and again, it's very intriguing. But I guess this is part of it, that we have to gain more new software before we can even start to understand it. And I guess that's where I'm at, is, do I have to understand it? Why are you showing me this? One of the things they showed me last night was that the galaxy, even the solar system, was so much busier than we've been led to believe, which didn't surprise me. But it wasn't even close. It was a lot like, if we use the analogy of us being conscious here and what's actually going on when we're in dream state, it just looked so much bigger. I wish I could put some type of measurement to it, but it looked to me like there was 4 or 5 times more planets than can even be seen, with the visible light spectrum or with telescopes or whatever the case is, moons, and it was just a very, very busy. I remember that. And I remember all these different types of species, and it just looked, it almost made me feel inferior, like, wow, what are we, what are we here? Almost like we were the zoo or the sideshow or something. But they did come in and explain that everybody's equal and proportionate to the environment that they're in. They all had the same stature, because I like the people you talked about with the ETs that had the 400 IQ. I mean, relative to the environment that they're in, we proportionally have the same power and stature. Yeah, very interesting.
I think that there's 2 things I want to just bring up. First of all, was one 9-year-old that I was speaking to that was explaining how he clears negative energies, and he was taught how to do this, and explained that I know what to do now when they're around. I can clear them, but when I go out of body, I will often go to other children that are being bothered by these entities. He said, and I will clear them as well. So at 9 years old, he was quite aware he had another job to do, which was out of body, which was going and helping other souls and whatever. In terms of equality, as a soul, of course we're all equal if we're coming from the same source. It's just that I believe we've taken, if you like, a decision to be in limited environments so that we can experience and grow from them. And we've been many of these species. I mean, I talk to people who've had past lives where they've been dolphins, been on a water world of some kind. Some have been just energy, and the children have talked about this as well. Different forms of humanoid as well. And I remember one young man who was in regression, and he was a Zeta, and he was explaining how they'd moved something big from one dimension to another, and he said, it's a planet and we've moved it too quickly, and so we've now got to fix the energy of the planet. So actually moving celestial objects from one dimension to another, we have no idea what's possible.
That's not a coincidence that you said that, because I actually saw that last night. I saw what looked to be a moon or a planet with like where it was attached, and there was a small, almost like a tugboat would be to a big barge.
Yeah.
And that's the first thing that struck me. I thought, wow, that's not big enough to pull that thing. Yeah. But I actually saw something like that last night. And then one of the other things it showed me too, which I did start tapping into today when I had some time, and it was because I said, well, where is it? Where's the origin? And they said, well, it's outside of this container. Your origin is outside of this container. And I saw a little bit of like what people have talked about when they wake up. We've had people tell us quite a bit, hey, you and Morgan came in and you handed us a crystal, or we merged with you, or we did this, or we did that. And that's what I was trying to tap into. I was like, okay, is that the part that comes from outside the container, or is that a multidimensional aspect within the realm of the galaxy? Such as the young lady going to the ship and putting her body in stasis. I don't know. It's fascinating to me, this stuff going mainstream. And from what I've seen from or picked up from your journey, I mean, you were absolutely in an obscure arena when you started this out. and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger very quickly, isn't it?
Absolutely. I use the analogy that 40 years ago, I was a nurse and a midwife. And if you'd said to me, Mary, in 40 years' time, you'd be traveling the world talking about aliens, I'd have probably sent you to the nearest psychiatrist. So a lot has lots has
Yeah.
changed. And the wonderful thing, and why I said it's great not to know everything, is that over the 25 years that I've been in this field, it's been a gradual progression of understanding that gradually my awareness has grown and grown. And I always say that my reality is this ice flow that I'm standing on. And at the moment that one's working, until more information comes in and it's no longer working and I've got to create a new ice flow to stand on, which will melt, of course, down the track as well.
Yeah.
It's constant movement, but you have to, or you don't grow. So the whole point is to challenge always that awareness and say, okay, I don't know what I don't know. Show me what I don't know.
Yeah. And I've been thinking too, really for quite some time, maybe a couple, 2, 3 years, with shadow work here, zero pointing here, creativity here, right? And like I'm just considering those three things. And I was listening to you a minute ago, and you were talking about how we're receiving code through all these different ways, right? Just through a conversation, through music, through whatever. And I'm wondering what your perspective is on. For me, creativity seems to be a main line. You can just call it, let's say, a download that is an inspiration to express and share. And I can't really get it all together right now, but to me, there's some type of opportunity or vast potential to bring in code, yet it's being expressed. I don't know how to. I don't know. Almost like as you're giving, you're receiving. I don't know. What are your thoughts on creativity? I mean, because to me, just like you said a minute ago, it's all about expansion. That's going to melt. You create another one. That's almost like the base component of us. Creation itself.
Well, anyone who is one of the creators, whether a musician, whether an artist, and I remember, and I quoted in the New Human, the young man who's an artist, and he said to me that he comes from another dimension, and his artwork, the reason he's doing that artwork is to trigger perception, so that when people look at it, they're activated into a greater perception. He knew that that was his purpose. He was very aware of that. And that's just the art. We're not talking about the music that's being downloaded now by so many musicians, which are containing the frequencies. You get these talent shows now where you've got children singing with incredible voices and they're 10 years old. These are the star seeds that are also bringing in the frequencies through their voice, and the hosts and the shows, they're all saying, oh, aren't you amazing? They're coming in to bring those frequencies, and that's their job through the voice and whatever.
I've seen evidence of that. Morgan, sometimes when she's processing, she likes to watch like America's Got Talent, and I remember she showed me one a couple of weeks ago. It was a 10-year-old girl that sounded like Whitney Houston. I mean, it's like they were amazed. They were like, you're 10 years old?" I mean, it was amazing. I hadn't thought about that being one of the attributes, but everything is becoming physicalized. Have you received, with everything going on, and I don't know what your relation is with your team, or what the context is of it. I know you don't want to know everything, and I'm glad you told me that today. I need to remember that. But has there been any intel that kind of puts what's occurring in the physical experience, at least, in the illusionary physical experience, into light? Does it give it, have you received anything that's giving you a better understanding or more assurance or anything?
My real sense is that first of all, that we've all incarnated to be here for this, that we all got our role to play. And I, given so much negativity that's out there about the New World Order, all this kind of stuff, that it can be quite freaky and frightening to a lot of people. The whole issue was And they've said this, it's, it's always darkest before the dawn. I
Yeah.
know that's a cliche, but you've come here for this.
Yeah.
You've come for this shift. And the whole thing, I've always had a sense of, and they have reminded me, is all these new children that are coming in with all these abilities, this awareness. Some to said they've come to deal with the pollution, some as eco engineers, and a whole range of other things. They reminded me they haven't come in for a waste of time.
Yeah.
That this is because, and myself and you included, and all of the older models of human, we're the ones to assist with that shift. We're the ones that will help with the cognitive dissonance that is going to rise its head. And some of the protocols you're getting will help you with that.
Yeah. So we're like a counter, like
Yeah.
a counterbalance.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that I'm starting to see. Well, because everything to me, whether it's you consider it dark or light or whatever, the truth of it all is coming up. Doesn't matter who it is. Nobody's beyond that. But a lot of our journeys, we dipped into the darkness through trauma, through accidents, through whatever, drug addiction, whatever. And it was like, one way I saw it, it was explained to me is you can go X number of degrees above the zero as you've gone below. So that contrast basically creates the boundaries. And what I see happening now is the same type of thing, except it's happening at the same time. The distortion is going and it's expanding. And at the same time, so is the awareness, and with it, the higher sensitivities and the skills and abilities, which, when I look at these children, that's clear evidence to me. I mean, that's just like, even if you don't look at the older models, like you said, and their transformations in their own lives and their experiences, these children are coming in and they are just absolutely lit.
Yeah. And that's what I've loved about working with families and the children, is the children are clear conduits for their understanding. They haven't been at that time, if you like, compromised by the programming that the rest of us have, because we've got to get past that and start again. And that's the big challenge, isn't it? When you wake up, is everything you ever believed you've got to ditch and start again. And not everybody finds that very comfortable, because we've invested a lot in our programming, especially if you've gone to university or whatever. To let that go is really, really hard. But the children don't have any issue with that. They're coming in with that awareness already, awareness of who they're connected to, awareness of their origins, and with that, their awareness of truth and the resonance to truth. And a lot of the challenges for us older ones is to get back to that trust in ourselves and our own resonance, rather than looking at a newspaper to tell us the truth, or a radio station or whatever, but actually to sit with it and say, does this actually fit for me? And that's the big one, isn't it, for all of us, is to go back to trusting this. And that's often the challenge as you open up multidimensionally. How do you to integrate and trust that is the big one, because you're hearing something very different, maybe beyond your own vehicle.
And that's and the soul, it's like for the soul. I mean, I say the human is the hero, and I mean that in a lot of different ways, but it really is the soul, the I am soul. It's the soul has signed up for this. And I guess what I get from what you're saying is, we're taking all of our information from this one dimension and now we're privy to all these other possibilities, and being able to utilize those and implement them in our lives as we, move forward. But in terms of like, as a collective experience, and I know I've said it, and I know a lot of people have said it, and it, you go through this journey and you wake up some days and go, oh, you know what? I don't know anything. Everything I got, I'm just going to say I don't know anything. And but that is that it's that this is a group effort, and group being everything is going through the same thing at the same time. Do you feel that's what's happening still after all that's going on? I mean, and with your work and having access to these stories and everything that you have with your team, do you feel like that this is a synchronization, like a symphony, like an orchestra to include elementals, galactics, angelics, dimensions, timelines?
All of that. I
Mhm.
mean, that's the wonderful thing, is when you're still separating it out. And you'll get many spiritual people, and I've had those, for example, spiritualists that have been in a group and they've been quite happy to channel spirit guides and ascended masters and angelic realm and fairies or whatever, but for goodness sake, don't mention a black, a blue being with big black eyes, or a mantis being, or whatever, because that isn't okay. That's not
Mhm.
spiritual. And the whole point is it's all spiritual.
Yeah, I got
And
you.
it's, whether or not it's a physical manifestation, or it's interdimensional, extra dimensional, transdimensional, ones from our future, it is all spiritual, and
Yeah,
it's just different forms that we are allowing our perceptions
yeah.
to acknowledge and to interpret from our how much we understand.
Yeah, and it's interesting too that you bring that up because the the amplification of belief systems have really been front and center for the last few months, especially with this election on top of the quarantine. And it's been very visible in the lightworker community as people have taken very strong polarized positions and been very vocal and projected in very obvious ways. Now it's a beautiful gift to be able to observe all these things and use it for our own higher level of discernment. But it also shows me that if you take a group of light workers and you take a group of Catholics, or you take a group of this or that, that these belief systems are really they're really entrenched, and really, like I was talking to Seth a while ago, I mean, the only thing holding us between a fully lit soul and where we're at now are really just beliefs. You can call them fears, but it's just beliefs.
Exactly. I wrote a chapter called the God chapter, and the reason I did that, I've got two ministers of religion, Reverend Carter and another gentleman, Jeff Shute, who lives in Queensland, and Jeff has been 40 years a minister. And he ended up coming to one of my experiencer groups because he was having interactions with non-human intelligences and having recall of past lives. And he actually said to me the first time I ever met him, that if his bishop knew where he was attending, he'd have a heart attack.
He'd be getting an exorcism.
But he actually wrote for the book, how he more or less understood he'd been a hypocrite for 40 years because he'd had these experiences,
Yeah.
but hadn't owned them because he stayed with the
Yeah.
Christian dogma that was part of his ministry and whatever. And and Reverend Carter was the same, but they've expanded their understanding in a way that doesn't mean you lose it, but it means you just look at it from a different perspective. You know what I mean? I mean, I was a former Catholic, but I have to tell you that I believe Jesus was a star being, and I have on my Christmas tree a UFO instead of a star. Now, that's sort of what fits for me nowadays.
Yeah, I like that.
And that's not to offend anyone, but I think it could have very well been.
Absolutely. I had a download. He was a Syrian starseed. Yeah, this is wild. And I know you also work, or you had mentioned the last couple times about these professionals, scientists and medical and such, that have been coming out in a under the radar privately, and I think you've assisted them. Has the quarantine and the light that's been cast on the systems, especially the medical and the governmental, and even the police, has it done anything? Has it accelerated or catalyzed these professionals to start stepping out of the box more?
Absolutely. And one of the things that we're doing, which went from free to the and now to the Consciousness and Contact Research Institute, where we have a huge profile of PhDs,
Wow.
MDs, and whatever. And we've got one particular medical doctor talking about her own experiences. The whole idea of volume 2 of the book is about people's personal experiences, and I'm actually coming out the space closet a little bit as well. I find it really quite confronting. I'm great at talking about everybody else's experiences. Hold on a minute, I'm the normal. I'm the normal one. Not, but the bottom line is, it is a lot for those professionals. I mean, I haven't got to satisfy an employer that I'm normal, whatever normal is. But for those working in the field, whatever the profession, a psychologist or MD or psychiatrist or any of those working in that field, to come out and own your multidimensional experiences, is a huge thing. And I know Dr. Nina Olsen's going to be doing it, and she's a molecular biologist in Sweden. But there's an MD coming out, and she's going to be writing about her experiences. I'm going to be writing about mine. The whole point is to start saying it's time to come out the space closet. And I remember Lena saying to me that when she was talking to the mantis being, is it time for me now to come out and say this? And she had this instant healing, where something she'd had as a small child in misalignment with the vertebrae all came into alignment instantly, and it was okay, so I've got to do it. And it's very hard in the Scandinavian countries particularly. You can't really even talk about psychic stuff, let alone ETs. It's like that's the worst of the worst that you can talk about.
Wow, that's surprising. That surprises me, because I would think they're very progressive, but that I was going to say, but I thought the same thing about Australia. And not from having conversations with Morgan, just just through my upbringing, growing up in America and being a history buff and just seeing things on the surface. But sometimes things aren't always what they appear. I mean, I was really, as I saw more and more of it, because Morgan's from Melbourne and her son lives there, so she was watching Sky News Australia and different things, and I'd look at it and I'd be like, wait a minute. And I even researched a little bit of the way it was structured, because she was telling me about, how there was a link to Great Britain, United Kingdom, and how that's all structured. And it's really a very contained situation, as has been evidenced by, what's been going on the last few months. And it was, what's amazed me too has been the way, what seems to be, okay, because the only thing you can look at is what they show you. I even have to question, any of these supposed alt news platforms. But what amazed me anyway was the number of people that just blindly follow the directions, blindly buy the narrative. And I got to think that would have to change. But to your point earlier, I don't think there's anything that's going to bring that change, but more just a greater level of distortion.
It's hard to know, and I think there's going to be multiple things that perhaps are the catalyst for that. What going back briefly to, there's 2 points you make. One is in Australia, there are certain places in Australia that are a lot more open and more metaphysical, like the Sunshine Coast, for example, in Queensland. And there are other places in pockets in Perth, for example, particularly open and what have you. So it's a bit like your Californians and, your more structured middle America, maybe, that's a little bit more into the old way of thinking.
Yeah.
With Scandinavia, the thing that was quite startling for me was when I was giving a talk in Stockholm, and it was only a small group that Dr. Olsen had organized. And this 28-year-old young man stood up and he said, Mary, my experience in my country was I was with friends and I started to articulate a star language or a light language. They called the police and I ended up in hospital.
Wow.
That was his experience.
That's
Okay?
freaky.
And
That's
that's with friends. He was with friends. They thought he'd gone balmy, crazy.
that's crazy. Is right. I was just looking at, and this is another reason I thought that over the years too, because if I look at the Soulogy demographics by region, well, really it's by city, but because of the way Australia's made up, it's more of a region. And after New York, London, uh, and I think New Mexico, where Sedona is, it's fourth, fifth, and sixth are Australian.
Mm,
Sydney,
mm,
Melbourne, and I guess Queensland,
mm.
which is interesting,
Yeah,
to me. So it's almost like and maybe it's not about the individual numbers, how many people. Maybe it's about the energy. And I would
yeah,
have to think that say in Melbourne, there'd have to be a significant number of light holders, or at least a strong percentage if you look at their energetic block, to, again, like you were saying earlier about the cognitive dissonance and
mm,
us who are in the older models being there to offset the distortion.
yeah. Interestingly, you've got countries like South America that are far more open to the metaphysical and spiritualism and whatever, and seeing ovnis, that's all. But they tie into spiritualism a little bit more and whatever. But there's more of an openness to it. So the cultures also dictate. But interestingly, I mention a young boy, young man from India who wrote to me some years ago, and he explained to me his biggest issue was that he knew he was a star seed, but he said the trouble is with my countrymen. He said they still believe all these beings are gods and they worship them. He says, but I know they're extraterrestrials. How
Wow.
can I tell my family, how can I tell my rellies that they're worshipping extraterrestrials? So that that isn't it interesting, the experience depending on the belief systems of the culture,
Yeah.
etc.,
Yeah.
etc. And that's his issue, was
Yeah.
he knew right away he was a starseed. I've had uh, contact from some individuals, and one particularly broke my heart, was a young man in Tasmania who was brought up in a very strict Christian household. I can't remember which belief system, which church it was. And he said, Mary, I've always known I was a star seed. I've always known that this is my truth. He said, my parents are very entrenched in their their beliefs, and that, they're lovely people. He said, but I can't tell them what I feel and what I know. And he said, and I had a chat with him over a number of emails, and I said, but how about trying to connect with them over? And he said, no, Mary, they just wouldn't get it. And he actually said, I've considered taking my life a number of times because it's so.
Wow. Wow, that's powerful. I mean, that shows you, how that's powerful. I mean, it shows you a lot of things. It shows you how powerful the downloads are, and his recollection. It shows you how powerful the programming is. You have something that you don't see a lot of. I don't. Okay, and I think, I'm saying that um, carefully. Uh, in the light worker communities that I feel very strong needs to be, we need to replicate it. I've been told over the last, whatever, but certainly the last month, as we started to expand in Soulogy, and the connection became a little bit wider. Soulogy can be a bridge for disclosure platforms, conspiracy platforms, light worker platforms. And in that thought, in respect to that, you don't seem to carry a charge at all when it comes to quarantines and comes to conspiracies and comes to all the boogeyman stuff that's out there, which we know goes on forever.
Mm.
Um, so, first of all, thank you. Second of all, have you had without getting, too personal, but is it a topic? Do you have these discussions with people? Because I know you're very well connected. Do you have these discussions with people in the field? Do you notice that? Are you surprised by the charge that some folks are carrying in regard to these issues?
Yes. Well, I'm not surprised because we're all human. And, I look at different levels of what perspective are you going to look at this from? Are you
Hmm.
looking from this level, this level, this level, or whatever, you know? And sometimes we all go down to what I call the bottom level and we're pissed off and we're likely to say we're just pissed off, or whatever. And I can
Yeah.
do that as good as anybody. But the only way that you can make sense of it is when you take it to that high
Yeah.
perspective as a soul journey, and you're here to experience duality.
Yeah.
And and I believe we've all created our own particular adventure down here.
Yeah.
I almost put it in line with the Star Trek holodeck, that you're saying, right, we're going into the 1930s now. We'll see what it's like there. When you can do that and you see it from that perspective, then things start to make sense. If you go to those other levels, it doesn't mean that I don't have views and opinions.
Yeah.
My biggest issue with this planet is the injustice.
Yeah.
I find it really hard to deal with that. And when I see how individuals are harmed by these agendas and what have you. But I remember arguing with my team about this, that why is it I'm very blessed. I have I've got my own home. I live in a beautiful spot of the world and all the other stuff. And yet you're seeing all these souls that are barely able to find a crust of bread or have clean water. And the only way I make sense of it is to know that very likely in other lifetimes I've been in that, I've experienced, or it might be the next life, I don't know. But that's the way I've learned to make sense of the soul. And why would a soul choose that? Well, we're choosing all sorts of experiences. And we've all been murderers. I remember I was a Roman soldier where I went around quite happily killing. I remember describing that like a robot when I was asked, because I'd seen myself as a Roman soldier and we were going past Gaul and we were fighting the Gauls. I'd never even known what the Gauls were until it came out my mouth. And the gentleman who was doing the regression said, so what does it feel like to kill? And I said, you just don't feel, you just kill. And I remember this coming out my mouth and thinking, that's horrendous, Mary. There's another dialogue going on. That's horrendous that you could just talk about killing like that. But we've all been in those limited awareness experiencing. And we've all done horrible things at some point. And what in a way doesn't amuse me but saddens me is when people look at different cultures, different ways of living, or different colors, and I'm thinking to myself, you've all been those cultures, mate. You've all been black, white, yellow, pink and green. So how can you judge someone because they're different? Because that's probably been you in another lifetime or whatever. So when you do that, it actually gives you a perspective that allows you to see and observe and not get caught up so
Well,
much.
and back to what you said too, the soul knows what it's doing, so that's another way to put it. Now you mentioned psychology, and I'm going to throw in psychiatry. In what I'm getting at is, I guess, what we call mental illness, schizophrenia, manic depression or bipolar, split personalities and all this. What's your take on that? Are these folks, are they more in touch or attached or connected to their multidimensional aspects? Do you think that's what that is?
I'll tell you briefly a story, and I wrote it in Awakening, of a young girl at 19 who phoned me and said, Mary, when I was 14 years old, I told the doctor I was seeing aliens. He diagnosed me as schizophrenic, and he put me on all these medications. She said, I nearly took my life several times. I saw a talk show just recently where they were talking about the very experiences I had, and now I know maybe I'm not crazy after all.
Yeah.
So that's just one. I have story after story after story of experiences who, because they didn't know or didn't understand what was going on, or were trying to find out what was going on, would either go to a psychiatrist because they were maybe seeing orbs of light or seeing beings or seeing energy fields and thinking there's something wrong with their eyes or whatever. And the problem is that what that has been, everything has been given a diagnosis, like we talked about the ADHD, and that's a dysfunction. No, it isn't. It's an upgrade human. They're wired differently. The problem has been, and that's the dark agenda, we know that everything is being made to work in a way that they can give it a diagnosis so they can medicate you, and the drug companies say thank you very much. That's another, that's helping me on the way to the bank. That's why I say that psychology, psychiatry, it's all in the same packet as far as I'm concerned.
Agreed.
What we're not doing is realizing that everyone is multidimensional, and because it's not part of our programming in Western society, people immediately think there's something wrong with them, and then they'll go and try and get some understanding instead of having the people that are able to understand this, like they do in indigenous tribes where they have the shamans who explain and lead you through your accessing of other realms so that you ground it and understand it and can work with it. And this is where I say psychiatry and psychology need to be, it all needs to start again. And we have to understand how we operate multidimensionally, and that the beings are showing us that through our our intuition, through our sensing, our knowing, our feeling, our clairvoyance, clairsentience, all those things. If you can give people a map, which is what I do a lot of, I say to people, where you're riding the bike, you just need to know where the brakes are and where the lights are, and I'll show you how to sort of control and balance it a little bit better. It's usually just needing a map to understand what it is they're experiencing. This whole thing that they're doing is actually insidious because it's shutting people down. And
well, I mean,
helping them.
And if you extrapolate that, if you think about that, it actually is the same pattern through everything. So if I say, how did two planes bring down three buildings? I'm a conspiracy nut, or if I go, even a lot of us, when we woke up, I told my family, I'm talking the 6 biblical prophets and Jesus and Mary and Archangel Michael. And they're looking at me like, I don't think so. But really anything that anyone that is expressing our multidimensionality, because that's the example you're giving or the example I'm giving, or any of us that woke up in our particular wake-up experience, those are immediately shut down. Those are immediately, pushed to the side, because here there's only one narrative, and it seems like it's cracking. I mean, it just doesn't seem like it's going to last. There's just, even with whatever initiatives they put out there, they being us, but I mean, I'm with you. I think we designed all this, but it's getting real interesting, and I feel like there could be like a quantum leap, like literally a quantum leap for us very soon.
Yeah. I absolutely believe that, and I think we've all incarnated to be part of that, and we're the ones straddling both realities to help the new ones coming in to understand it so that they can actually come to do what they've come here to do. So we're sort of holding the space. I believe we're holding the space for that. And and for me, one of the most amazing things of my work is to see someone who's already downloading information and what have you, but still uncertain about what to trust, to actually see them move to that next place where they can ground it and integrate it in harmony. So they're working in harmony to be fully actualized. And that's what a lot of religions don't want you to do. And the psychology don't want you to do, because then you're going to challenge.
Stay in the box. Stay in the box. So
we can control.
you've been doing this a long time, and I know there's a lot of different methods as far as practitioners go. Um, I would imagine, well, I know this to be true because I've observed it with other people and even in myself, that as we're leveling up, first it's these six ascendeds, and then it's this three spirit guides, and then it's a galactic visit, and it's this and that. And there is a period where you've got to ground and integrate it in your practice. I would imagine that you see how people are challenged by wanting to stay there or wanting to attach to this or that. Are you seeing any, for lack of a better word, improvement in your clientele where they're able to let go and open up to go up again and again and again?
Absolutely. I always reckon that, that when you, as a therapist, you always get the clientele that you can help and deal with. And I've noticed that more and more the ones that come to me are the ones that are ready.
Okay.
They're ready just for that final little move
Mm,
and integration, and they're off, and
yeah.
they're some amazing individuals. And a lot of the time it's just a sense of reassurance,
Yeah.
a sense of everything's going well. And for me, that's been something that I worked on for myself for a long time, because I was at a point where I was in a group of very credentialed people. A couple of them were clinical psychologists, one was a nursing sister and whatever, and we were doing everything you can imagine from psychometry to remote healing or all that. And I remember thinking, well, if I'm going crazy, I'm going crazy with some really good professionals. And we'll all go crazy together. But the fascinating point I want to make is one of those ladies was an amazing clairvoyant. She used to bring in her guide, who was one of these North American Indians, who would come out with all this amazing stuff. And what was fascinating, she said she'd go to work and she'd have this piece of paper saying, do you hear voices? Do you this, and this, and this, as diagnosing them.
Yeah.
And I remember teasing her, saying, I can't believe how you handle that, given the fact that you are the most amazing clairaudient lady, going. But this is the nonsense.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
see the emperor has no clothes, and it's actually having the courage
Yeah.
to actually say that. And that's what we're being tasked to do now.
Yeah.
Stand up, speak
Yeah.
your truth.
And another, yes, I agree with that totally. Both energetically and literally, And I guess another way to put it is that question too would be: are you see? You speak of, and I've heard others. I've heard Morgan talk about it. Taking them, showing them, take them to the door, open the door, and then, like you said, they're off to the races. Are you seeing more people doing that? Uh, that are taking their sovereignty, I guess is what it is. Are you seeing more people doing that over the years?
Absolutely. And what's heartening is it's right across the spectrum
Hmm.
from all professions. You might have a psychiatric nurse on one hand, and you may have a farmer in another. You may have a celebrity or a politician or a lawyer or whatever. It doesn't matter their profession. The hardest, I think, the ones that usually struggle the most are the ones that have had higher education,
Okay.
because they've got to get past that programming as
Yeah.
well, which does give them more of a challenge. Or they're in a profession where they'll be judged very heavily
Yeah.
by coming out with this.
Yeah. Somebody asked, and I'm going to have a question on this subject, or in general. Somebody asked, have any of the children or any of your clients spoken to the prophecy of Uluru?
Well, not particularly, although I'm very aware of Stephen and Evan Strong's information about the magic box.
Yeah.
And the fact that that's going to be activated by the elders. And this is bringing out another frequency for those that are receptive to it. That's as much as I know.
Yeah.
No, oh, hold on. There is one gentleman in the States that he had his interactions with a ball of light, he calls it. And since that time, his third eye was activated. He's downloading huge amounts of esoteric information, and he had information on the Uluru thing. His name is Jimmy Jones, and he, if you go to his site, lovely ex-pilot, lovely gentleman, and his information, he's downloaded something like 6 books or something already.
Wow.
Jimmy is the real sweetheart. He's very humble soul, but was in a US pilot. And after this, his wife and him saw this ball of light, but he then had an interaction with it and has continued to be activated with the downloads of all sorts of
Fascinating
information.
Yeah, we had them on the show too, by the way. We had Evan and yeah, that was a very good show. Oh, okay. So I got that one. Oh, and so my question was, when she posed that, was in terms of prophecy. Wow. I mean, and maybe it's just like what I saw the last day, where there's all these different, containers within the container, but is it another program? I guess potentially, depending on who you are, it could be, right? Another put my eggs in that basket kind of scenario. And then for others, I guess it could be something they're aligned with or a part of. I don't know. I didn't want to answer the question, but what are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are that we all create our own programs that we want to unfold for us as a soul. So as Dr. Lena Olson was saying, she was being shown the population separating into 2 frequencies, low frequency people and high frequency people. The low frequency people want to stay in the 3D reality, because that's what suits their soul purpose. And the ones that are ready to go to that next level are saying, no, we're ready now to evolve into X, Y, and Z. So I think it's all within the matrix.
Yeah, true. Yeah, it's true. I saw a post the other day by a lady, and I know her, but I can't remember as usual. And she said the same thing. The way she explained it was very good. A lot like this, where some people are going to go that way and some people go that way. And it's not a right or wrong or lesser or better. It's just the way, a general way to kind of explain what's going on. Yeah, fascinating. You are fascinating, and and you look great. And it's always a pleasure talking to you. I can't even imagine taking in all the information, experiences you've had, and maintaining my sanity or not letting my ego get away with me. That's a lot of time invested. And now, did you say you were that you're writing another book?
No, but I was told by my sister many years ago, when she visited a clairvoyant, before I even got involved in all of this, and I still lived in England. She said to me, this clairvoyant said that you're going to write 3 books at some point. And I laughed my head off at the time, because this was about 35 years ago. I've done 2, and I have no idea if there is another one there, but at some point, who knows?
Right. Well, The New Human, and it's on Amazon, right? Isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. And your website is what? What is your website?
Yes, that's acern.com.au, ACERN, or the Alien Lady. .com.au or maryrodwell.com.au. Any of those will get you in there.
The Alien Lady. Have you gotten? We got to go, but have you over the years and even lately? I mean, have you caught any flack? Have you had any pushback? Have you had the Men in Black or anything like that happen?
Well, actually, I'm sure I've been monitored, but on the whole, I'm left alone, and I don't know whether they think I'm just not worth bothering with.
You're probably protected.
That might very well be the case.
Yeah, your field is strong. Yeah. Well, it was good seeing you again. Thank you so much for your service to humanity, and I look forward to collaborating with you again and again.
Oh, thank you, Todd. It's been a pleasure as always. Take care.
You take care. Bye-bye. Thank you so much. All right.
You're welcome.